Hello and welcome to another edition of Only in Illinois. I'm Matt Dietrich here with Madeline Dubeck. We're on the stage of the Hoagland Center for the Arts in Springfield, where we just wrapped up a very good media panel discussing the 2014 gubernatorial election with three journalists who have done a very good job.
Veterans of political coverage in
Right.
Illinois. Yeah.
Our guest panelists were Bernard Schoenberg of the State Journal-Register in Springfield, Amanda Vinicky, the State House Bureau Chief of WUIS-FM in Springfield, and Dave McKinney, who is the State House Bureau Chief of the Chicago Sun-Times. We had a lot of interesting insights on what I think is proving to be an election for the ages.
Absolutely.
We have a candidate in Bruce Rauner, the likes of which we've never seen before, no voting record. We have Governor Pat Quinn. We have class warfare going on here, everything.
Calls for change,
So,
lots of money to spend.
right. So rather than Madeline and I talking to you today, we're going to turn it over to our panelists and give you some highlights from what turned out to be very good discussion.
Fascinating. It's like, I love covering these political days because what you do when you go out there is you sort of get a general sense of each of the political parties based on how many people are there, the enthusiasm level, the slate of candidates. What I came away with yesterday after the Republican Day was the sense that this was very much like a day in the late 1990s when Republicans were, running things. They had the governorship then, of course. There was that level of enthusiasm. They had what we saw during much of the decade in the early 2000s was that, they would bring out Jim Edgar and they would bring out Judy Topinka as sort of the symbols of the gravy days of the 1990s. And they had this lineup of candidates there, the Alan Keyeses of the world. And it was almost during that period as if to say, we can be like we once were, but yet they didn't have the firepower to do it. This time, they clearly have the firepower to do it. They have a candidate in Rauner who has got immense wealth and resources to throw at this, and it's just percolating through every level.
Okay, on the other side, the Democrats are hopeful that Quinn's come from behind can do what it did last time with, Bill Brady. Apparently, people were saying they were fitting curtains in the mansion. That didn't work too well. Somebody should have fixed the roof in the meantime, but there's no Barack Obama at the top of the ticket. So the Democrats are come from behind. They're really trying to play a lot on Bruce Rauner's millions, and I'm not sure how far that goes with people, but it will definitely be, this class warfare thing will definitely be part of the campaign. And Quinn has been winning elections for 30 years, talking about paycheck to paycheck, and I've been making fun of that phrase for years. As Madeline, who will talk to you, wrote in a column earlier in the week, Rauner's up now, but it's really too early to call because things can happen, and 3 months to the election is a really long time.
Instead, it is kind of almost juvenile tactics, be it with mascots or, yes, making an entrance with a motorcycle coming in, and yet it's a lot of show at this juncture.
A lot more to add except to say that I think this thing gets uglier and we haven't seen anything yet in that regard. So far it's really been about nothing but mascots, and that's alarming, I think, for a lot of us. And fear is very much a motivating factor, and it seems to me as if the Democrats are a little more fearful than the Republicans, and the remaining question is whether that rust can get knocked off the Republican organization and whether that really comes back to life enough to make up for those Democratic votes in Chicago and the battleground that you just referred to in the Cook County suburbs.
Or nothing.
Is Bruce Rauner buying this election? That's the thing that we heard a lot in the Republican primary. We haven't heard a whole lot other than what Jesse White said earlier this week. Do you think he's buying the election? What does that mean? What does buying the election mean?
I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what it means either, and frankly, I'm not really bothered by the idea that the candidate is putting a lot of money into a campaign. If I were him, I would do the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. Where it's problematic, though, is if we see where all these people get into trouble is like, the classic example is Blagojevich, where he had a fundraising juggernaut early in his administration, and And what we would see is just these people trading access to get, to get state contracts and things like that. And if we see that play out, as we well could with Rauner, maybe, I don't know, we could see it with Quinn too, I guess, but that's where the buying the election part is problematic. But if you're just going out and buying campaign signs, if you're going out and doing polling, you're going out and buying commercials, that's honestly what they kind of ought to be doing to get their message out. Because you know what, you think about the average person out there, they're more tuned in to ESPN or the Hallmark Channel or whatever, and it's like penetrating
Does
that.
anybody watch commercials anymore?
Well, you got.
You gotta fast forward through them on your DVR.
Listen, I got to tell you something.
Bernie
Though.
does.
I have probably some of you subscribe to Hulu. Do you know what that is? On Apple TV. I had a program on the other night, and it was an old television program. But in between the commercials, up pops a Rauner commercial, and I'm thinking, you've seriously penetrated this deep into the process where you're doing Hulu.
Everywhere, sponsored Twitters, he shows up whenever I'm searching anything. I mean, clearly my computer knows me very well, but nonetheless, Rauner messages pop up. I'm not getting that from Quinn, and when I say my computer knows me well, I just mean that I'm a geek about Illinois politics, not necessarily Rauner more so than Quinn, but I think it kind of does give people the heebie-jeebies when somebody is putting that much money into a campaign. Why is he doing that? Does he really love Illinois that much? Who has money to do
But
those sort of things?
TV is expensive, though.
TV is expensive, and that's what you have to do. I mean, it's the reality of things, and I think almost. I think it's something that one can't really ignore as we talk constantly about how much money Rauner is putting in, that Pat Quinn has a whole lot of money behind him, even if it's not in his campaign. He is the incumbent governor. Whenever he signs a bill, it's the Governor Pat Quinn did this, Governor Pat Quinn did this, Governor Pat Quinn, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes it's bad stuff, but sometimes it's just there. People know the name. Rauner had to build up name recognition. He came out of nowhere. Quinn has the ability, he still has a state plane that he uses to fly all over the place for these bill signings, to show up in communities, to try and build support there. So when you're thinking about how much money Rauner has, you can't escape the money that we, in a sense, are putting in. I'm not alleging wrongdoing or anything in that regard. It's just he's the governor. So taxpayer money is, in a sense, also propelling his potential future remaining in that office.
Quinn has hammered away at this, he's an out-of-touch billionaire, and yet when you see Rauner at an event like yesterday's at the state fair, I've been struck by how he really comes off as very personable, not aloof, riding in on the Harley. How much is that going to resonate? Yeah.
He clearly enjoys that more than anybody we've seen for a while. Even, with Quinn is Quinn, but there's something a little bit stilted to me about his whole campaign persona. Bruce Rauner seems very comfortable in his own skin to me and enjoys what went on yesterday.
Right. Now, having said that and given him credit for that, he is a candidate like we haven't seen before, at least in my memory. He doesn't have a voting record. And he can pretty much stay quiet about a lot of stuff. And he's stayed very, very, very quiet about a whole lot of things. What do you think, what are we going to hear from Bruce Rauner between now and November? Are we going to...
And the couple times that he has said things, it hasn't worked out very well this summer. He's not really had a great summer.
Right.
The first time he put out a policy position, it was prairie chickens. And that just became a debacle almost. And so I think that, then he put out another level of that, and it was essentially him admitting that he might need to raise a few taxes. And so, I think that unfortunately the message has been reinforced that they're better off if he keeps quiet about what he intends to do if he becomes governor.
I think that Bruce Rauner has proven, and many people have said this, unlike other rich folks who get into this for the first time, he is very comfortable with people. He loves dealing with people. He gets energy out of a crowd. He's good at shaking hands. He's also not necessarily good for the people up here, and by extension, perhaps the public. He's very disciplined in not taking questions too often or more than he wants. It might work, but it also leaves gaps in what we know about him, and that's very troubling.
I mean, it's very
So
much
what
like
do we do
Rahm
about
Emanuel.
that?
What do we do about that? We keep asking questions.
Just from purely a self-centered journalistic standpoint, I think a Rauner governorship would be great copy, because you'd have, and especially if it's a deal where, you know, we have a Democratic-led General Assembly, because then, you know, you're going to have this guy who's high and mighty having to, you know, deal with Mike Madigan, and that, talk about a clash of titans, that is going to be fascinating to cover. I mean,
I always thought that the greatest gift that the Democrats gave to Bruce Rauner in this election was passing gay marriage and Governor Quinn signing it into law, because
Now we're not asking him about it every 2 seconds.
Right, and all Rauner has to say is, no, I'm not going to try to repeal it. It's over. I have nothing to do with it. It's law. End of story. If that were still in
But
play.
the Democrats are very much trying to use that
Right.
issue still to drum up opposition to
But I
Rauner.
think that since it's already law, since it's not something that's pending, since it's not something that's going to come across his desk and he might be able to veto, it's a lot less of a. It's
Not front page
Not
news.
much of a weapon.
yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a winning formula for a candidate like Rauner to be silent or certainly moderate on social issues, because it clobbers the Republicans every election that these social issues come up. You know, you look back to Edgar, you look back to George Bryan, you look back to Thompson. These guys are all cut out of the same fabric, where they're you know, fiscal conservatives, social moderates, and those are the Republicans who can win in Illinois, even though we are a blue state. And I think that I just think, though, from a standpoint as a voter, I hate the fact you know, forget the fact that they won't answer our questions. That's who cares? But it's like, you know, as an electorate, you know, we're all kind of like, you know, you wouldn't buy a car that way if somebody said, well, you know, I'm not going to tell you if the air conditioning works, you know, and that's kind of what we have right now.
Or if there's gas in the tank.
or whatever, yeah, you know, and at least you have to credit Quinn, because he has been clear on what his positions are with the tax increase, for example, and he does have a record, and you know, you may agree with it or you may disagree with it, but I do find it refreshing. And Quinn, it's pretty clear, you know, we know what his positions are on things. With Rauner, we don't.
Yeah, well, with quick answer to the second question. Quinn said it was on the record. It was in public. He said, I want it to be temporary. It's not temporary. Everybody knows it. It's there. If you ask Rauner, you know, how much land do you own, and he doesn't tell you, it's not there until somebody finds out.
I think second question, part of it's also maybe, admittedly, a part of Quinn fatigue. I mean, you covered the guy, whoever, there's a lot to uncover new about Rauner. And so that's part of it. I do think I will add, in terms of a Quinn issue that is on his back, but also another instance where maybe he said something, and just because they say something doesn't make it so. What's going on with the investigation into hiring at the Illinois Department of Transportation? I think John O'Connor's piece that revealed that, oh wait, the changes that I've been saying actually never came to fruition. We're still working on those. I can't prove to you that it's happened. That should be damning for Quinn. Again, guy who tries to build himself up and identify himself as a reformer and good government guy, but lo and behold, oh wait, you that was basically a lie. I don't think there's any way that you can twist that, or who knows, if so, he hasn't proven otherwise.
And that's it for this week's edition of Only in Illinois. We hope you will join us here next week. And if you don't receive our email already, please visit www.rebootillinois.com and sign up for it. It's got a lot of good news tips, and it'll tell you everything that's going on our website. Thanks for tuning in.